Hello and welcome to another Tuesday Talk in Politics. This is Political Paradigm. I'm Terry Ikumi. My conversation today continues with the House of Representatives leadership with regards to the 10th House of Representatives. And my guest is the Chairman, House Committee on Judiciary, Honorable Onofiok Luke. Honorable, welcome to Political Paradigm.
Thank you, Terry. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's nice to speak with you again after what played out during the general elections. So I just ask you, how are you doing?
I'm very fine in the hands of the Almighty God, and I thank Him for the air that I breathe.
You know why I asked this question, don't you? Because you will not be returning to the National Assembly. You will not be a part of the 10th House of Representatives. And it's not because you lost an election or lost your re-election bid. It's because you opted to go for governorship and didn't buy any form for the House. And for some, it's sort of a loss to the National Assembly. Because I've heard your colleagues refer to you as one of the finest lawmakers of the 9th House of Representatives. How do you feel?
I give glory to God Almighty, and I thank my colleagues for those accolades. I feel fulfilled. Fulfilled in the sense that personally I set my goals into the future, and then I do timelines to them. I told myself that I was coming to do just a term in the National Assembly from 2019 to 2023, and then set out to become the chief executive of my state. And so I didn't have in my, as part of my goals, a return to the National Assembly for a second term. And so I couldn't make it to the governorship of the state. I'm happy, I'm excited. I think it's an opportunity too for me to get into private life, get into my legal practice, and then be able to see things from the private man's perspective, the common man's perspective, and then see how I can offer some interventions when I'm being called upon personally to be able to offer. But for me, I feel fulfilled as I go into private life.
You know, it's really nice to have you have that kind of mindset with regard to the outcome of the elections. But, you know me, this is Political Paradigm. I would always talk politics in the depth of it. And I recall that you and I have had this conversation when you were running for the governorship, just before the primaries, and you had some concerns. And it's good for some, and I've spoken to some persons from your state who think that it is good that you would, sort of sheath your sword and support the man who is now the governor-elect, Moino. You gave up at some point and decided that you would put your ambition behind and let him go forward. And it will be interesting to know why, especially because at the time, there were rumors that you were not happy with what was playing out and you wanted to go to the Labour Party to contest for the governorship election. So what happened? Why did you decide to work with the current governor-elect now?
The very first thing is that I see everything that plays out in any man's life or in any setting as a will of God. And for me, that's what drives me. I did what I had to do. I did the consultations across the 31 local government. I consulted the paramount rulers. I consulted the governor. I consulted the party elders. I consulted the party leaders. And so I was on good standing. But somewhere along the line, because of the legislation we had in the National Assembly, which, whether inadvertently, we legislated out statutory delegates of the party, which was what some of us were actually building our consultation on, hoping that there would be the electorate at the primaries. And then having to see that it's only the ad hoc delegates that are going to be the ones vote, and then you don't have a single contribution in who emerges the ad hoc delegate. And so the first thing I did was not to partake in that primaries. And I said I was not going to partake in the primaries because I saw that, how do you go into primaries that you don't know or you've not contributed on the emergence? So after then, yes, there was an offer to go to the Labour Party. But I don't do things without sitting down to reflect. I don't do things just by spur of the moment. I don't play politics of anger or emotions. I think through political decisions a lot and then leave them at the feet of the cross. I take it to God in prayer. And so I did that. And for whatsoever thing you are going to contest or you are going to vie for, it's the people that are going to make you. And so I had a team. I went back to this team. I said, advise me, what do I do? And my team told me that throughout the campaign the consultations, you were quite clear that even if you don't win the primaries, you're not going to leave the party. And you have been, stating that you are consistent. And so it's going to make a rubbish of your brand if you recant and immediately decide to get the ticket of another party. And so the governor-elect today, who was a candidate of my party, we come from the same local government. And our paramount ruler is the king of the BBOs, the Ibom BBO, and he's equally the chairman State Council of Chiefs. The governor-elect too, I must give it to him, tried to meet with me, scheduled a meeting across lines, scheduled a meeting in Lagos, scheduled a meeting in Uyo, scheduled a meeting in Abuja, and then spoke to me and asked me to see the need to support him, at least for the sake of the local government. And then after then, the paramount ruler sent for me and convened 12 paramount rulers of my ethnic group, and I went there and they asked me not to go to another party and asked me to support the candidacy of Pastor Mobaseno. And at that point, I hold high regards for the traditional institution. I hold them in high regards and respect, especially my paramount ruler, His Eminence Ntenyan SD Etuk, and the Ibom of the BBO. So I had to accede to their plea. And then my mother plays a very big role in whatsoever I do in life. My mother came to me and said, God has been faithful to you all these years. And then every time you emerge the candidate of the party, everybody would rally around you in the same People's Democratic Party. I don't want you to go to another party. I want you to support the candidate of the party who has emerged. Many young persons in my state were not happy. They felt I could go to the Labour Party. But I understand the political dynamics of my state. And then again, like I said before, politics should not be played with emotions. It should be politics out of deep conviction. And so you don't just wake up in a day and because you're not happy about something, out of anger, you take a position and you take a decision, which if care is not taken, if it's a decision taken in the heat of passion, there is likely going to be a regret in the future.
When you talk about politics of conviction, I'm tempted to ask you, what's your conviction that Pastor Umoino, who was the governor-elect, would make a good governor? Yes, there are some positivities around him. Many have spoken highly of him. He's done so well in the private sector. I had an interview with him as well where he reeled out some of his plans for the people of Akwa Ibom State. But what was your conviction?
My first conviction was, like I said, probably primordial. Permit me to say this, use the word primordial in the sense that I saw, when I was contesting for the governor, I need to lay this, I was not just contesting for the governor as a person. I felt that my local government, Ibom local government area, has contributed to the success of the administration right from, in this full republic, right from 1999. We have played very prominent role as a local government in the success of the administration of His Excellency Akwa Victor Otta. We played a very prominent role in the administration of His Excellency Senator Dr. Godswill Bodo-Kpabio. And then we equally played a prominent role in the government of His Excellency Governor Dongrebele Mangwe. So I felt that it's an opportunity for our local government to take that shot and then be at the driver's seat. And so that was the first consideration. The second conviction is that I've had a relationship with Pastor Mono before his emergence and then before his active involvement in politics. And then while talking business, doing business, and then doing even the politics at the local government level. And so I hear him speak. First, he was the chairman of the hospital's management board under His Excellency Akwa Victor Otta. And I know that they played a prominent role in the coming on board of the Ibom Low Meridian Hotels and Resorts, now Ibom Icon Hotels. And so that was his own part of contribution to the success of that administration and the growth of the state in that particular sector, the hospitality. And then I know that when you listen to him, he's passionate about building small businesses. He's passionate about the growth of young people. He's passionate about the growth of small businesses. And so with this, I believe that it's a man that we can partner. Partner in the sense that when I handed over my structure to him, I equally handed over my blueprint. And I believe that others who contested with him too, on the platform of the People's Democratic Party, where people like Ide Wodion, where people like Sir James Inyema, equally, I want to believe so, that they handed to him their own manifesto and their own blueprint. And so he's a man who is open to learning and open to experience as part of his personality threat. And so I believe that he's going to get an eclectic view of all this and then puts them together, refine them, with his own agenda seated at the very bottom, which is basically rural development. We've had development in the state. We appreciate former leaders who have built roads, who have done great things in the urban centers, and then even roads in the rural areas. But there are critical needs in the rural communities. If you go to a community like Edomwik in Isnopolo, if you go to Ukontre in Mbo local government area, if you go to a rural community like Ukorutan in Esionodom local government area, or Nditia or Odio in Eket local government area, you will agree with me that they need active development. Sometimes the ballot boxes and papers get to those communities, and we don't bother to find out whether health facilities get to those communities. Well. This is not, I'm just stating this is not in condemnation of what has been done in the past. The past leaders have done their, have contributed their immense effort.
Perhaps not enough. I mean,
yeah,
if up till this moment, that's the state of things there. It's not, they've not done it.
So all this formed my conviction about him, that he's going to be able to perform.
Great. I recall that you said something about being prompted to go to the Labour Party. As you look at how the Labour Party performed across the states, especially in the South, do you believe or do you have any regrets that you may have won this election if you had joined the Labour Party, beyond the convictions that you talked about and respect for your party?
No, I wouldn't make that judgment.
No regrets.
You can only know the outcome when the outcome has come to become. So I sit down here, I'm happy in the very first instance that I'm where I am. Yeah, I sit down here, I am fulfilled. Not because necessarily of winning, or I thought I would have won, but because of the fact that there are persons who would have said, tomorrow the younger generation will come to you and say, you said you're not going to do this, and actually you have recanted immediately. Now the elections are over and we have seen the outcome. What we should be looking at is not, whether I had contested or not, whether I won or not. What we should be looking at, what can we do to move our state, to move our state constituencies, to move our federal constituency, to move our senatorial district, and to move our country away from where we are and leave it better than where we met it.
You talk about elections have come and gone. There are outcomes now. There are reactions. And it's interesting that over a month after the election, the sort of feedback we get from the people suggests quite some concerns with regards to how the elections held and perhaps especially the presidential election. So let me ask you, what do you make of the general elections and the outcomes till this day?
What do I make of the general elections? And I think before I come there, I failed to make a point in the last question you've asked. Let me use the opportunity to sincerely, sincerely regret the fact that some people felt, like I said, I should have been on the ballot. And then for those who felt that have disappointed them, my sincere apologies for that. I think this is the first opportunity I've had to speak on that I was not on the ballot. It was out of conviction and the things I saw around me. And then I believe that they pardoned me and then going forward, because they were asking, pushing, and said, you should have been on the ballot. So my sincere apologies to them. What do I make of the general elections? First, I want to say that we have moved from where we were. One, when the 9th National Assembly was to be inaugurated, there was agenda setting by Nigerians. The press, the civil society, the electorate, the business sector. And in that agenda setting, there were critical things that Nigerians put on the agenda, on the legislative agenda. On issues that should be in the legislative agenda. One was the Petroleum Industry Bill, the electoral reforms, sector reforms, justice sector reforms, and constitutional alteration to make for devolution of powers. And so we got that in our legislative agenda as the 9th National Assembly under the leadership of Right Honorable Femi Gbadabiamila. And then when the ad hoc committee was set up, headed by Professor Jolosi Hombere, I'm laying a foundation to show that we have moved from where we were and the contributions that we have been able to make from the legislature, so that when I arrive at that conclusion, you see why I draw that conclusion. And so we went on with the challenges in the passing of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2022. The back and forth, the issue about electronic voting, the issue about electronic transmission of results, we were able to pass a legislation that made some innovations. And then with that, we had laid a solid foundation for the 2023 elections. And now the ball shifted from the legislature, shifted from the populace to the managers of the election, in this case, the Independent National Electoral Commission. And so we introduced certain innovations that were clamored by Nigerians, which found expressions in the provisions of the Electoral Act 2022. And that has helped at certain stages of election to make for credible processes. At certain stages. I'm careful in choice of my words. At certain stages. At the stage of primaries, we have had some innovations, like where the court must determine the pre-election matters before the elections. That is an innovation, shifted from where we were before, prior to 2022 Electoral Act. And so that's an achievement. The next stage was the issue of accreditation. And so we legalized the use of bimodal voters accreditation system, BVAS. That was a shift. And you would agree with me that with the deployment of BVAS, relatively, we had credibility of the voting process at that level. We did not have what should be an El Dorado, but we did not have massive cases, as we used to hear of, ballot box stuffing, ballot box snatching, ballot papers, massive thumb printing of ballot papers. We did not have issues of much of electoral violence, though we have skeletal ones across the country. Why? Because the electorate and those who used to perpetuate, in this case, those who used to perpetuate electoral violence and those irregularities know that if you stop the ballot boxes, it's zero. If you have, if the accredited numbers of voters does not match with the vote cast, then it is zero vote. So everybody had to abide by that rule. So on that particular process, I could say we did well. INEC did well in that process accreditation, did well in making sure that the materials arrived at the centers early enough. Where we had challenges was the issue at the process of collation. And what is that challenge? We would not have had this challenge if INEC had kept to their promise of uploading the result real-time online. Probably that is where Nigerian trusts, the trust of the populace, the trust of the electorate began to nosedive when they did not see that result real-time online in IREF. And so no matter what you come to say, there is an issue. And so because of this, not minding the good sides that we have had prior to coalition, and so the entire process, Nigerians have lumped up the entire process. Most Nigerians have lumped up the entire process to say, it has been one challenge or the other, without giving it, without apportioning. They look at, what they look at is the generality of the result, the outcome totally, which they are right to, because the end product of the electoral process are the results in per se, but the real end product of the electoral process is good governance, benefits to the people, dividends of democracy. So in this case, the managers of election, one way or the other, helped in widening the trust gap between Nigerians and the leadership. I mean, between Nigerians and the political class, the leadership, which INEC is involved. And more so, the challenge we had was the doublespeak. INEC came out boldly, sometimes in December, I think November, when there were rumors that certain things were going to be jettisoned as it concerns transmission of result, and if I could get it right, and the process leading to collation. And INEC said, we have not jettisoned, we are going to go with online real-time transmission of result. And then for us, after the elections, to come and hear some other thing that it could not be done, that was a doublespeak. And so maybe with what we have seen, the agenda for the 10th National Assembly and for Nigerians is how do we now sanitize the collation part of the electoral process. We've been able to bring some sanity and electoral integrity in the voting part, on the primaries part, on the accreditation part. And so the agenda for the 10th National Assembly and for Nigerians as we go into the next dispensation is how do we come together because it's going to be an incremental development. We cannot have an Eldorado in a day. And so thank God the 9th National Assembly has been able to come thus far. And so it's for the 10th National Assembly to build upon it at the point of collation.
We will talk a lot about the 10th Assembly, which you will not be a part of. But before we do that, let's talk about the tribunal that has started sitting. The Presidential Elections Petition Tribunal has started sitting now. And you, as chairman of the House Committee on Judiciary, you've pushed for certain reforms for the judiciary. And also, the Electoral Act has also made some adjustments to ensure that petitions are addressed better. What are your expectations as the tribunal commences sitting?
My expectations is going to be from a legal perspective, the perspective of a legal practitioner, by the grace of God, which is my calling. I have, and then I can use my position as the chairman House Committee on Judiciary to equally make some predictions. I have interfaced with judicial officers across this country in the course of the exercise of my responsibility as the chairman House Committee on Judiciary. And I know that the judiciary of this country is made up of, especially at the level, in short, across the entire spectrum of the judicial system in this country, made up of tested men. I know they said there are no women in the legal profession, but for gender purposes, tested men and women with proven integrity and proven track record. And they know now, they know the feelings of Nigerians. I'm not talking about emotions. They know that Nigerians want justice. The Nigerian wants the application of the law to the cases before them. The law is not emotions. The law follows the rules. And so they are going to take the totality of the rules, the legislations that we have passed, and then subject those legislations to test. And then apply, listen to counsels on different sides, to counsels to the petitioners, counsels to the respondent, whether it is in the election, in the state and National Assembly election petition tribunals, election petition tribunals, right? Or whether it's in the governorship petition tribunal or in the presidential election petition tribunal. And so I believe that they are going to do justice according to law, justice according to the fact before them. And I believe that they are going to do more of justice rather than technicalities. And I believe that those men and women I've interacted with at the Supreme Court or at the Court of Appeal or the judges at the state level, I know that they want to write their names on the part of history positively.
Well, you know that the speed with which this justice will be dispensed is being called to question as well. There are those who believe that it should be as quickly as possible so that it doesn't affect the May 29 swearing, even though there are concerns that there is nothing that will affect the May 29 swearing, because clearly speaking, there is no legal framework that says that it must be concluded before the 29th of May. But lawyers like yourself have called it social justice and said that justice should be expedited ahead of the 29th of May.
Yeah, no matter how fast you want the wheel of justice to spin, it has to spin according to laid down rules and principles. Now, let's take an analogy in the pre-election matters. Primaries were conducted, I think, around May. And up till January, there were still, judgment were still handed down in pre-election matters. How many months interval? May, June, July, August, September, November, December. 7 months. If you add January, 8 months for pre-election matters. Now, there is no legal framework for the determination of election petitions before inauguration. There is no legal framework to that effect. And so you cannot import norms. You cannot import convention. And you cannot craft any non-existent law or unwritten law to ask the tribunal to give judgment before May 29th.
But with regards to these reforms that you speak about, should there be an adjustment to that law?
Yeah, with regards to this reform, that should be an agenda for the 10th National Assembly. Like we saw the lacuna in the pre-election matters, and then came up with the legislation to be able to deal with that. I believe that that has been seen as a lacuna, and I believe so that the 10th National Assembly would find a way to be able to cure that lacuna. But as long as there is no legal framework to demand that to be performed, for God's sake, let those who have won election. Because if you say it would affect May 29th, just we are all a whole lot of people are having their eyes only on the presidency. If you are saying it should be May 29th, let me ask us to be objective. The entire Nigerians. If you are saying, it should be delivered before May 29th, if you are a member of the People's Democratic Party, for instance, and you said we should dispense or swearing in of the president should not happen on May 29th, you are invariably saying that the governors who have won election on the platform of their parties should not equally be sworn in on May 29th because there are petitions too against those governors. If you are a member of the Labour Party, for instance, you are saying that on any time the president makes a proclamation for the National Assembly inauguration, you are saying that the National Assembly should not be inaugurated because if you say there should not be an inauguration on May 29, then you are saying that there is nobody who has the authority and power to swear in, to proclaim the National Assembly into existence in sometime in June. And so you are equally denying yourself of the benefit of someone who should speak for you. For instance, if you are an FCT and you are a member of the Labour Party, you are saying that Senator-elect Ireti Kingibe should not be sworn in. If you are a member of the Labour Party, you said, they should not be swearing in on May 29 before the determination, until the determination of the election petition at the tribunals, you are saying that an Alex Oti of Abia should not be sworn in. If you are a member of PDP and say it should not happen, you are now saying that a Pastor Mono or an Ahmed Fintiri of Adamawa should not be sworn in. Or you are saying that if you are a member of APC and say it shouldn't happen, and then you are saying that Francis Mufiru of Ibom State should not be sworn in. And so these are the dynamics. And for us, what we should look at is let's follow the legislation that has been on ground. Let's allow those who have won the election to assume office and offices, and let us follow the Constitution. Let us follow the Electoral Act. Now that we have concluded the electoral process as determined by the managers of election in INEC, the next phase of this electoral process is at the tribunals. And so let us go to the tribunals and allow the tribunals to determine this case and avoid certain comments that is hitting up the polity. certain comments that are hurtful, certain comments that are provocative. For instance, I said on both sides, if you're a member of the APC and you have won, you should be magnanimous with that victory. Allow those, yes, you are the majority, you have your way, allow those in the minority to have their say. Not for you to feel that those in the minority should not have their say. And if you are in the minority too, you should know that in cases and places you have won, you should allow those who are in the majority to be sworn in and then be mindful of the comment you make that will not necessarily heighten tension, that will not easily evoke passion, and then cause people to act in an unlawful manner. What we need now, sir, we've seen what has happened in a place like Sudan. God forbid. It's struggle for power. I keep saying it, I'll repeat it. And so we should use that as a lesson. And in this struggle of power for power, it's because mostly of actions and inactions, and to a greater extent, the comment that we make. At this point in time, whether you're a member of APC, you're a member of PDP, you're a member of LP, you're a member of NPP, you're a member of SDP, you're a member of ADC, you're a member of PRP, whatever party you're a member of, please, we should be mindful of our comment. We should speak words of peace, words of reconciliation, especially from the ruling party. Words that seek to bring people together, words that seeks to calm frayed nerves, instead of words that seeks to infuriate.
You know, this brings me to the healing process, which is being canvassed now. There are those who fear that by now we should have started the healing process of the country. But as it stands, it's still election season, sadly. What for you would be the right way to go about the healing in the country? Because I recall clearly that you had, in one of your interviews, said that a lot of people went into the elections hurting, came out of it still hurting.
For me, reconciliation is quite very key. I don't know how many people have any other country to run to. I don't. This is my country. I feel proud of my country. And that's why the little opportunity I have, I try to make my own contribution to the betterment of my country. Terry, before now, I don't know what has happened. I don't know whether I'm right or wrong. Terry, before now, we used to hear of eminent Nigerians. Eggheads that will speak, and then Nigerians would listen. Now, I believe that we can start that. Already, Terry, this country is so much divided. Divided along ethnic lines, divided along political lines, divided along religious lines. So the first healing process is, even as we go into the leadership of the National Assembly, the first leading process is to give every segment of this country, whether by reason of religion or ethnic, a sense of belonging. That's the beginning. For instance, by the grace of God, and we've had a Muslim ticket emerge as the president and vice president. And so it is right and right that a person of a Christian faith should be given the number 3 position in this country. That's part of the healing process. The other healing process is for people like General Yakubu Gowon, the Sultan of Sokoto, the Ibom of Ibibio, the Obon of Calabar, the Amanayobo of Brass, eggheads like that to come together and begin a conscious and intentional tour of this country to meet with certain part of this country and speak about peace. Because a whole lot of people are hurting. The youth are hurting. The elders are hurting. Some farmers are hurting because they cannot go back to their farmlands to farm. Some persons in the middle belt are hurting because of incessant killings. Some people in southern Kaduna are hurting. Some people in Zamfara are hurting because of killings by bandits. So the healing process it's beyond politics. It has to cut across the entire strata of the Nigerian in the economy. The businessmen are hurting because of enormous taxation, which has tended to have a negative impact on their business. So it should be a total healing process in every sector of the Nigerian economy.
You know, some would question what is all talk and no action. Because you talk about the need for certain leaders to go about the country to have conversations when there are political considerations that should have been made from the perspective of those who want fairness. And that hasn't been done so far. For example, you talked about the need for a Christian to become Senate president. As it stands now, it would appear that the APC is going for Senator Godswill Akpabio. He's from the South-South. And the South-South has also clamored for that. But then the people of the Southeast, I think yesterday, had a meeting and insisted, and these are lawmakers cutting across different parties, all from the Southeast, insisting that this should go to the Southeast. So when we talk about healing process, all talk and no action to some persons, what would you make of that?
Rightly so, every part of this country have a right to seek for a sense of inclusion. They want to have a sense of belonging. We have clamored, I come from South-South, we have clamored for a sense of belonging in this country over time, and then gradually we seem to be having it. And this would be an opportunity for us to. I will not be making, because sometimes the way it is right now, if you state certain positions, it looks as if you don't consider the feelings of your brothers in other parts of the country. The Southeast, as it is, has a right to advocate for certain positions in the government. But for me, I equally have a right, as somebody from South-South, to advocate that the South-Southerner should be given that opportunity. And so there are so many things in government. All what we need is the leadership as we go forward from May 29 to begin to look at these issues and address them. There is no way two regions in the southern part of Nigeria can occupy one seat. It has to be one. And so the region that takes it, whether it is South-South that takes it, which I am clamoring for, then Southeast has to be given some level of involvement in the government by one position or the other. And I know, too, that with that, if what I read in the papers are true, I'm not a member of the ruling party, I'm a member of the People's Democratic Party, a proud one at that. If it is true with what I read in yesterday's papers, that the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives has been, one of us have been favored by the caucus of the ruling party. If it is true, what I read in Sunday's papers yesterday, then that is a way of trying to accommodate Southeast. And I believe with other positions, they are going to be more accommodated. But they equally, every segment of this country has to be given a sense of belonging.
Well, what do you make of a Godswill Akpabio Senate presidency? And I ask this because since his name popped up, there have been some reactions with many reminding the ruling party that they're coming off as insensitive to Nigerians. I know you're not a member of the ruling party, but he is from your state, and clearly the South-South has the agitation. There's no way, almost no way, that a minority, a PDP member, would be Senate president. So yes, it's something that would be welcomed regardless. So some describe the consensus candidacy of Godswill Akpabio by the All Progressives Congress as insensitive to Nigerians, especially because they say the allegations around the president himself are enormous. The allegations around the vice president, enormous. And then we have a Senate president, or someone who is likely to be the Senate president, who has allegations as well. In fact, he's still being investigated for corruption by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. And that dates back to quite recently, just a few days ago, when the EFCC says he should turn himself in. What do you make of his Senate presidency?
I will not, there are issues that I don't like making comment on national television. I only get to write and maybe speak about them on the floor of the legislature where I have legislative immunity. You and I have been part of this country. You and I have seen persons I thank God you use the word allegations. They are not convictions. And so they remain in the realm of allegations. He said, he who alleges must prove. And then the allegations you say, I don't know what are the deeper details of those allegations, have not been subjected to legal interpretation, in the sense that it has not been taken to court yet. And so until they are being taken to court, until pronouncements are being made, that is when we would have said, oh, ABCD has done ABCD, or has violated the law, or had been found to have misapplied or misappropriated funds, as it were. And so as long as that has not been done, they remain in the realms of allegation. Now, talking about his Senate presidency, I've had the opportunity of working with him. I'm not a member of his party, but he comes from my state, he comes from my region. And so with that, every right-thinking person from my state and every right-thinking person from my region, the South will support the Senator Godswill Akpabio because of what we stand to benefit in Nigeria. When I say what we stand to benefit in Nigeria, in the sense that his wealth of experience, he served in the executive, he served in the legislature as a Senate minority leader. See, there is always a friction between the executive and the legislature. And so how you are able to manage those two makes you a good presiding officer. And so sometimes the electorate feels that the vibrancy of the legislature is seen in how so much the legislature engages in fisticuff and grandstanding with the executive. That is when the vibrancy of the legislature is seen. But most times they don't understand that when two elephants fight, like the executive and the legislature, it is the ground that suffers. People tend to give wrong appellation to the 9 National Assembly, calling it an appendage of the executive. But let's look at the achievement of the 9 National Assembly. Let's look at what the 9 National Assembly in that cooperation, not in a position of being subservient, not in a position of abdicating its role or responsibility or in jettisoning its independence in its relationship with the executive, but in cooperating. Let's look at what it has delivered for Nigerians. Let's look at when we had the pandemic. We've never seen that kind of a thing in this era or in this generation. Let's look at what that cooperation was able to deliver to Nigerians. Let's look at what we've been able to deliver on Nigerians on the Electoral Act.
What did it deliver during the pandemic?
Okay, let's talk about what it delivered in the pandemic. In the very first instance, at the point, the executive did not see the pandemic as a serious issue. I remember that there was a national sport festival slated for Edo. And even upon the clamor by Nigerians that sports festival should be put on hold, they went ahead. It took the legislature, by the grace of God, a motion moved by yours sincerely, to stop that national sports festival and draw the attention of the executive to the coming COVID-19, which was gradually moving towards us. And so with that, we were able to draw the attention of the executive to this. The next one was managing the entire process, getting to get approvals and funds available, appropriations available for the different ministries, departments, and agencies to be able to rise to the occasion in fighting the pandemic. Then within the legislature, especially the House of Representatives, led by Right Honorable Femi Gbajabamila and the entire leadership, Right Honorable Ahmed Wase as the Deputy Speaker and the entire leadership, the Speaker sponsored a bill, emergency economic stimulus bill, that was a fine piece of legislation to deal with the issue that were thrown up during the pandemic. And this was to provide for the deferment of residential mortgage to Federal Mortgage Bank, to provide for the suspension of certain import duties.
Just before you go into the details of that.
No, I want to show you, because if we don't look at these details, we will not be able to look at the contribution.
No, the details you want to look for are non-existent, because that bill did not pass.
It did not pass, but the executive at the end of the day executed some of the proposals that were in that bill with executive action.
So the point I'm trying to make is, I'm not trying to make a mess of the legislature. I'm just trying to say that the facts must speak for themselves, which is that bill did not exist in the end. So the decisions the executive took were taken from their perspective. And I recall that this bill did not even get to the Senate to start with. So let's leave that for another day.
But I'm trying to show you the contribution of...
It's the position of the executive stands alone from that of the executive on this particular matter.
They took lessons from the resolution.
It's okay to say that. But Honorable, let me take you to the leadership of the 10th National Assembly. By this time, 4 years ago, you were a first-timer. You were being lobbied by those who want to be Speaker. You will not be there next year. It breaks my heart to say that to you, but there are a lot of new lawmakers going through what you went through 4 years ago, who are being lobbied now by those who want to be Speaker. What would you say to them? Also, tell us your experience.
Yeah, I have said this before, I think in one of the interviews, and I will say it again, and I took a decision on, I think, the 6th of May, 2019, and I don't regret that decision. I took the decision when we finished from a meeting adopting Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila as the Speaker, and then coming out to address the press. I was still the Speaker of my House of Assembly, the State House of Assembly. And so the Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila and then his DG of campaign, Abdul Mumini Jibrin, said, Speaker Akwa, we are going to address the press. And so I addressed the press on behalf. That was the very first public endorsement of Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila. And then what formed my conviction to take that decision? I have followed the National Assembly politics over time. I followed the antecedent. I followed the legislative acumen and then of Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila as a legislator, the bills he sponsored, his advocacy, his oratory prowess, and then I followed his activity as a minority leader. I followed his activity as a majority leader of the House. And then coming and then following from tradition from elsewhere, like I followed the politics of Nancy Pelosi in US, when the Democrats were not in the majority in the ruling, and then she was a majority leader. And then when they took power and they were in the majority, she became the Speaker.
So it's almost easy to say that they didn't need to lobby you for,
long
because you already understood who you were.
I understood who I was. I understood who I was going for. Looking at the array of aspirants, why? Apart from that, we had a Commonwealth. I'm a member of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. So as the Speaker of the House of Assembly, we went to Mauritius. And then the Speaker of the House of, Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila as the majority leader was the leader of the Nigerian delegation. He spoke, make a presentation on behalf of Nigeria, and there was a standing ovation. I told myself that he has made Nigeria proud. And so coming to become a member of the legislature,
it was easy to make that decision.
It was easy to make that decision. I looked at myself, I said, who would I want to preside over the House? And I went for him.
I'm questioning whether you look at the crop of those running for Speaker. We have more people now, by the way, than you had options from in 2019.
Yes.
There are more people now. And then to crown it all, there are more new lawmakers now than we had in 2019. And they are more diverse now. So when you look at this, there must be extra lobbying beyond perhaps belief, I believe. But what would you say to these lawmakers with regards to how they go about selecting the Speaker or perhaps the principal officers of the House? Also bearing in mind that a minority of the House of Representatives, of the 10th House as it stands now, which outnumbers the APC, believe that they can produce the Speaker.
Let me say here, for those I have worked with, because it is only one of the aspirants that I've not had opportunity to work with, which is Jaji, because it was not in the 9th National Assembly. It's not in the 9th National Assembly. For those I have worked with, from the Deputy Speaker, the Right Honorable Ahmed Wase, to the House Leader Adodogwa, to Gagdi Yusuf Gagdi, to Aliyu Betara, and then to Tajuddin Abbas,
Sada
Sole. They have great credentials. I must tell you, they have great legislative credentials. Out of that, it's only one person that occupied that seat. First, whosoever God wills that would make for the betterment of Nigerians and will make for good legislation, God will make that person to be. But amongst them, there is an individual with a towering credentials.
Who's that?
And that is Tajuddin Abbas. I have worked with him in the Committee on Judiciary. He has the highest number of bills today. You cannot be a good, not you cannot. Let me rephrase. Now, you need to be a good legislator before you can be a good presiding officer. And so in this case, he has been a good legislator by having the highest number of bills and having the highest number of bills too assented to by Mr. President. So that puts him in a position as a good legislator. And then he's liberal. We know what we need in the next legislature, especially in the House of Representatives, because of the diverse nature of members. We need somebody again in the mode of Efemi Gbajabiamila. Why do I say so? Right, Efemi Gbajabiamila knew that there were quite a whole new members on the floor. And so while we were going about our legislative duties, he gave us opportunities to learn. Like, for instance, I use this as an example every time I speak on this. The standing orders of the House makes provision for only 2 matters of urgent public importance per a day sitting. But because he needed to accommodate the diverse nature of members, their leanings, and the insecurity or the security challenges members had in their respective constituencies, he would take up to 3 or 4 or 5 in a day. And so that made for the social cohesion of the House. And so we need a speaker who is going to allow members to speak freely, who is not going to shout down at members, and who is going to have carry everybody along, whether you are from LP, whether you are from PDP, and the members, the speaker too, who will respect ranking, but at the same time too, give opportunity for new members. For instance, today, by the grace of God, with the magnanimity of Right of Efemi Gbajabiamila and the leadership of the House of Representatives, I sit today as a chairman of Judiciary Committee.
As a first timer.
As a first timer. And so we need a speaker who is going to be that liberal. And I see that speaker in Tajuddin Abbas.
Tajuddin Abbas. But then I need you to still respond to I don't know if you consider it a serious issue, that the minority want to produce the speaker because they outnumber the APC. I know you've never heard of this, but it is the truth. They've passed a resolution that they want to produce the speaker.
My brother, Terry, I have been in legislative business for 12 years. It's not what people come out to say. That happens at the back end. By the time the leadership, when I said the leadership, by the time the leadership of the party, because the party has a great influence, by the time the ruling party decides to take their decision, no matter the structure that has been built, they will be conquered at the end of the day.
It's basically lobbying, isn't it?
I can tell you, it's lobbying. And then too, it's dangerous to a point that the man you went to with a meeting to say, we are standing here, we no agree. The next 1 minute, you might not know that the man has appended his signature to a document endorsing the candidature of the party, because that's how it is. The party most times comes to determine the leadership of the legislature. Through lobbying. Why? Because they need the leadership and the legislator that they will be able to pass through they will be able to pass their policies, pass the campaign promises they made through without much of resistance. Most importantly, it is good when those policies are to the benefit of the Nigerian populace. Where we have a challenge is probably when those policies tends to favor a few. That would be bad. That is when, if the legislator leans towards that, that is where the legislator has done wrong.
Honorable Luke, just before you go, I have 2 questions for you, and I hope you can answer quickly. What must the 10th National Assembly do to uphold its integrity?
What they must do to uphold its integrity is that, first, is that they have to keep their independence. Independence in the sense that they have to speak out when they need to speak out. I use an instance. Yes, the Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila was a product of his party. But when matters came, he stood on the part of Nigerians. I want to use an instance. NASS, when he did not sit well with some leadership of the party at the national, he took a stand and said, I'm not going to sign up on this year's budget except funds are included for compensation to victims of police brutality. I was scared. I said, his party are going to come after him. But he said, this is what Nigerians want. And so we need the leadership of, whether it's in the Senate or in the House of Representatives, that is able to take that stand on the part of Nigerians.
Okay.
Like the leadership too that will be able to interface, like Right Honorable Femi Gbajabamila leadership did, interfacing in labor conflict.
All right, finally and quickly, please. I just want to get your thoughts on the sentencing of your colleague, Senator Ekekwe in London. Despite the pleas by the Akwa Parliament, which he once led. What do you make of that? And perhaps question how, whether or not the Parliament, Nigerian Parliament, explored all diplomatic options.
I'm emotional concerning that issue. Very emotional. Because of the totality of what is involved, the personality involved, and then the reason why he's involved, the child held and everything. Not that I would not justify what he has done, not that he went in to commit a crime. I don't know what has been the real, because you hear different stories of the entire scenario. Yeah. But as it is, it's sad. The law in UK has taken its course, and then we tried here to plead for mitigation or for the sentencing. The legislature has tried. Eminent personalities in the country have tried their best.
Okay.
It's a sad commentary in our history. A fine tested legislator, a professor of practice, and it's sad. That's
Honorable Onofiok, look, I'd like to thank you very much for your time. And as I always say to fine gentlemen like you, good luck with whatever else you find to do outside politics.
Teaching and mentorship.
Thank you very much. Honorable Onofiok Luke is the House Committee Chairman on Judiciary. He will not be in the 10th National Assembly, but he's dropped his 2 cents, as I say, on what the 10th National Assembly must do to correct perceptions, negative perceptions about its image. And that's Political Paradigm. Thank you very much for your time. You can catch this episode and others by simply searching Political Paradigm on YouTube or simply go to channelstv.com. I'm Terry Ikumi. Goodbye.